thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. The Harris County Law Library is very grateful to Ms. Russell and to Gulf Coast Reads to be able to participate in all this. The story that Terry mentioned is about Eb Fuhr, who I've been told has arrived at the Chicago Bar Association building in downtown Chicago. After the program, we are going to Skype in Mr. Fuhr to speak about his experiences. He was an internee at the Crystal City camp. His story is perhaps one of the more entertaining ones from the book, also one of the more tragic ones from the book as well.
It's always good to see Jan Jarboe Russell and her great book, which is pretty close to fact. It's even a great privilege to be part of Gulf Coast Reads, and it's also a privilege to be associated in this effort between the Chicago Bar Association and the Houston Bar Association. Before I begin talking about Crystal City, I do want to get across something very important about lawyers, because there was a big legal issue involved in internment, and it's so critical that I'm actually going to read a good part of this. Quote, 60,000 enemy aliens, mostly Germans, end quote, were picked up shortly after Pearl Harbor. About 90 hearing boards of a distinguished lawyer and a couple of private citizens would hear the case presented by the FBI. Quote, we didn't allow lawyers to represent them. I may say, Mr. Justice, and it was Goldberg, that it went much better, much faster without lawyers. To repeat this, quote, we didn't allow lawyers to represent them. I may say, Mr. Justice, that it went much better, much faster without lawyers, end quote. This was stated by James Rowe, the then Assistant Attorney General to Francis Biddle before the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. And that is a very commission that provided the, assured the apology and the financial rewards to the Japanese. At the very end of internment, Truman's Proclamation number 2655, July 14th, 1945, ordered deportation of all internees, which prompted 200 individual case filings, which were consolidated into one, the Slater case. This was heard in federal court and decided by Judge Simon Rifkind and appealed to the Circuit Court of Appeals, which affirmed all of the findings of the lower court. It agreed that habeas corpus was properly, quote, dismissed. That appellant, quote, was entitled to no hearing, end quote, and therefore, quote, cannot complain of the quality of the hearing he got, end quote. In other words, it was impossible for Schloiter to dispute the hearsay evidence of anonymous, non-present witnesses, and it was therefore impossible to challenge those witnesses and or the evidence presented by the FBI. The court also sustained the constitutionality of the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 and to sustaining the continued war powers granted the president even at a late date of 1947. See the New York Times report of 1347 had 700 enemy aliens facing ouster, and these exhibits are available, I believe, here at the association here, including the New York Times report. I was in Crystal City until April 1947, and then turned on and sent to Ellis Island to be deported under this order. Several fortuitous things happened to delay that, and in July of 1947, the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senate Subcommittee on the Judiciary, chaired by Senator Langer, was convened on Ellis Island. They granted us hearings. It resulted in Senate Bill S-1749, which directed Attorney General Tom Clark to, quote, cancel forthwith all outstanding warrants of arrest, removal, or deportation, quote, in the cases of the 250 named. I am on page 2, but the bill was rendered moot because of the mass releases that result. The Constitution prevailed, even though the executive in the form of the president wanted us gone, and the courts agreed fully to that. But the legislative prevailed by this act of the subcommittee on the judiciary. I was 17 when arrested in my high school, in Woodward High School, on a warrant by Attorney General Francis Biddle, and I was released in September of 1947, and I was 22 years old when I was released. And it was a terrific feeling to be on that ferry to Manhattan and leaving Ellis Island in the back. In 1940, the Alien Registration Act required every alien of no matter from which country, age 14 or over, to register. And this is my registration. I was 15 at the time. And just think of what it would be like to have every alien today register for that he's not a citizen and how he came to this country and who he works for, where he goes to school, and that kind of thing. It would probably be a revolution. But nevertheless, it was painless. But after Pearl Harbor, Axis aliens were required then to re-register under the same number of the alien registration number, but we were issued this booklet, which I call an internal passport, and I was in, it was 1942. Anyway, I was 17 years of age. We had to carry that with us all the time, and at the same time, with that registration, we had to surrender all weapons, shortwave radios, cameras. Travel over 50 miles required the approval of the local police chief or other authorities designated by the Attorney General. Air travel was not permitted under any circumstances, and you were not supposed to go near any military bases, bridges, tunnels, and that kind of thing. I was arrested on an Attorney General warrant in March 1943 in my high school in Cincinnati, Woodward High School, which was a completely integrated high school of 3,800 students. Half the population was black, the other half was white. I didn't major in football, but I did letter in football and baseball, so I really didn't have to go to class at all. But on the night of March 43, they put me in the Hamilton County Workhouse, which is a medieval prison of 3-tier cells and single cells, and that was the toilet in the cell was a galvanized bucket, and like a bad movie, the bed was just hung off the wall on a chain. And that night, the guards stirred up the inmates there, saying, when we open the doors in the morning for breakfast, what are we going to do to these, what are you guys going to do with these Nazis we just brought in? And all night long they're yelling, screaming, we're going to go blah, blah. But fortunately, when they opened those cell doors, absolutely nothing happened. And we were told then to get back into our street clothes and to go downtown for the hearing. And the hearing was, as I stated before, no lawyers were permitted. And you didn't know who made the statement. The FBI read the statement, and it was indicated before, there was a distinguished attorney that was the head of the board, and then plus 2 civilians, and they heard the data, and then they adjudicated that I was a dangerous alien enemy and that I should be interned for the duration of the war. So I was taken to Chicago then next day in shackles to 4800 South Ellis Avenue, and it's there's a I have a picture of the mansion. It exists today, and at the time it was bereft of everything except iron cots for sleeping, and it was really a transition point. So from there, you were either determined that you were going to be interned at various places like Fort Lincoln, North Dakota, Seagoville, Texas, Crystal City, Texas, Kennedy, Texas, Stringtown, Oklahoma, and several other places. On Easter Sunday, we had an ecumenical church service by a Roman Catholic priest who was an internee, and a Romanian Catholic priest who could also play a terrific gypsy violin. And when we had this ecumenical service for something like 37 inmates, and they signed the inside of a book I had, and these are the names on the exhibit. Now, the building still exists, and fortunately, it was bought by a black couple, and they've restored it to really magazine-grade quality. And I know that because there was a film shot there called The Children of Internment, and one of the episodes, of course, is in that building. In July 1943, I was sent to the family camp to be reunited with my parents, who were interned in August of 1942, which meant that I really lived alone between August of 42 and March of 43. And incidentally, I did forge my mother's name for permission to play football because I couldn't forge my father's. Now, the inmates were just about 50-50. This is the aerial shot, and Jan showed it before in a better view. And we did get along better than Jan said. Now, I have a picture of a brass band, a wind band, or is more correct, of about 22, and all dressed for a concert of all dressed alike, and half of them were Japanese and half were German in the same band. And we swam in the same pool together at the same time. There were two different bathhouses, but it wasn't for Japanese and Germans, it was for male and female. And of course, the American school was indeed for both Germans and Japanese, and the gal that became my wife she was the first graduate of Federal High School in Crystal City, Texas. For all intents and purposes, the inmates ran Crystal City, Texas. Except for the staff, the guards, the staff, the censors of our letters, and the terrific medical staff run by the United States Public Health Service, which was really good. Everything was run by them. And I was at one point I was the Iceman. I actually learned how to drive the ice truck in Crystal City, Texas, and every day we'd go out at least once or twice to pick up a load of ice because we all lived as family units in Crystal City, and we all had the old-fashioned ice box. Jan covered the several repatriation exchanges, so I won't bother getting into that, other than to say that they were really arranged between not the Department of Justice, but the State Department of the United States, the Foreign Office of Germany, and by Switzerland, which was really the protecting power agreed to by both the United States and Germany to handle all business and whatever, and to examine prisoner of war camps, internment camps, and to report and to try to get improvements made where necessary. And they employed the Swedish liner, the SS Gripsholm, and to traverse the war zone Atlantic, which was kind of tricky. And it was true, it was exchanged one for one. Most of the time it was the only prisoners of war Germany had were shot down American airmen after bombing raids in Germany, and a lot of those were very, very severely wounded. And so they, and humanitarian-wise, they were exchanged back to the United States in exchange for either wounded German prisoners of war in the United States or some of the civilians from Crystal City. For instance, a family of 5, let's say, composed of a German father, an American wife, let's say three German American children, and could be sent into war-torn Germany and be taught in Nazi education schools. I mean, I heard one of the only problems I have with Jan's book is some of the discussion about Nazis, and I kind of think it was more from the Japanese end of it, because I have never met anyone that professed being a Nazi, and whether it was interned in Chicago, Crystal City, Ellis Island, or anywhere else. And I'm sure there were some, and some of them might have been some of those German merchant marines that were interned after they docked their ships in New York or San Francisco, and they were interned at Fort Lincoln, North Dakota, or down in Fort Stanton, New Mexico. And Jan covered the 258 babies born there, and it's true, and it's really an amazing thing to think that every Japanese baby got that apology and that $20,000. Now, I've never asked for that $20,000, and maybe I should have, but nevertheless, those losses were really my parents' losses. They lost their house to looters. Everything was totally taken out, windows ripped off, doors ripped off, and the fire marshal said, what are you going to do about it? My father said, well, what I'll do is I can go and board up the place. And they said, well, that's fine. You will have to pay for 3 guards to go with you, their transportation, their per diem expenses to and from. And of course, we lost finally the house to foreclosure for lack of being able to pay the mortgage. But the amazing thing is that our story still remains really totally unknown. And literally, between Art and me and several other people, we've written hundreds of letters to letters of editors, lawyers, schools of law, etc., and we don't get a single answer back. Not a single answer comes back. Not even say, I read your letter and I threw it in the garbage. We sent multiple letters to every congressman and senators, to a group in the Congress of the United States that calls itself the German Caucus. They've even been decorated by the German government for their activity on German issues in the United States, but they don't answer a single letter about internment, and they probably never will. Now, I just have the firm belief that there's some agency of the United States government has put a stop or an embargo on publishing the internment of Europeans. The 25% of Americans claiming German heritage, and the 4 million who served in all theaters of World War II deserve the complete, unvarnished truth, no more, no less. We had the same, possibly even more losses than the Japanese. And my name and address is on there, and I'm glad to answer any questions from anywhere. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, Ed, we had the question of whether or not you continued to endure discrimination after Ellis Island.
No, actually, internment was actually good for me because I grew up in the gut of Cincinnati. My ambition was to to replace Ernie Lombardi as the catcher for the Cincinnati Reds. And being interned, I knew I lost my baseball skills, and I was exposed to all those great people from all over the world in Crystal City, Texas, and I literally expanded my mind. And I did meet my wife in Crystal City, Texas, and we had a wonderful life together for 56 years. I had a great family, and because of her, she worked and put me through college. And instead of being just a jock student, I graduated with highest honors from Ohio University. I'm a member of Beta Gamma Sigma Commerce Honorary. I was employed by Shell Oil Company in sales and marketing in Akron, Youngstown, Cincinnati, Rochester, New York, and where the marketing was really terrific, and I learned a lot there. And but I felt my sales and marketing skills were getting a little rusty, so I after 12 years, I went to the University of Wisconsin to sharpen my marketing abilities again, and I graduated with in management from the University of Wisconsin. Go Bucky Badgers! And I have a picture of me and Bucky Badger. But hey, I graduated with my MBA on my 40th birthday, on my 40th year. I went back to the 50th anniversary when I was 90. And so because of that, Bucky Badger and I were taken together with a picture, and we were making that W win. No, I've had a very interesting life. It's never been dull. I can't say that I've felt, well, in a way, Shell Oil Company did send me to an industrial lubricant school for 3 weeks. And they were going to put me into industrial sales. And then I was not able to get my citizenship paper until 1955. And so in 54 or something like that, they called me up and said, hey, by the way, you're not a citizen yet, are you? I said, no. This was after graduating with honors at the lubricant school. And so I feel that they probably tried to get clearance for me to sell to the armed forces, military bases, contractors that did stuff for the military, and they weren't able to do that. But there are other ways to earn your living, and I did that.
Did they use anything from the camp against you in 1955 when you applied for your citizenship?
Oh, hey, I'm glad you answered that question. Because in Summit County, where I became a citizen in Akron, Ohio, the room was full of people. And my wife was pregnant with our number 2 kid. And the judge said, Eberhard Fuhr, please stand up. So I stood up, and the only guy in the whole courtroom. And he started to read my dossier, which was that thick. And he was reading it for about 5 minutes, and he pointed to the immigration guy that asked him to read it said, if you ever do that again, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. All rise, raise your right hand, and swear that you will be loyal to the United States of America. Yes, so yeah, right, there was right at the last minute. But don't ask me why, and I don't know what the judge, he just read out the guy that asked it. What about him? Yeah. Well, when we were released from Ellis Island, they went back to Cincinnati, and I didn't go back to Cincinnati because my girlfriend to be and wife to be lived in Leone, New Jersey, and she found a room where I could board and have breakfast. And I sold insecticide door to door in New York for a year, and yeah, they went back, and but I never wanted to go back because I felt that some of those questions in the hearing were really from second and third cousins or aunts that indicated that you can almost detect who they were, even though they were anonymous allegations. But they went there, and I don't think they were ever really happy again because they lost everything, and it was always and my mother was interned when she was 52, and released in 5 years later. It was kind of late. But I wanted to add that Crystal City was not a concentration camp by any means, or that you can think about. It was an internment camp. It was well run. It was we never suffered for food, or it was hot and unpleasant in that way. But that's the way it is in that area. But it was definitely not a concentration camp. And I'm happy that the Japanese got their $20,000. I just hope they don't try to intimate that we were interned for cause when I indicated to you that we were not allowed to have lawyers. The rules of evidence that were non-existent in these hearings, and it didn't matter. As the judge said, you're not entitled to a hearing at all. And if you're not entitled to a hearing at all, it doesn't matter that you had a hearing or what was said. I want to thank you. It was really as bastion of the law. I really do respect the law, and over the years, you know you've got to have them because they do keep you out of trouble. Thanks for having me.